Meredith, how you doing?
I'm good. Week 6, 7, 8. I'm not
Uh-huh,
sure.
yep.
Now.
Meredith, how you feeling about it? You feeling pretty proud of yourself this morning? Feeling pretty good. By the way, for those of you who aren't privy to this, we have this happy hour we do with our company every week. And this week we decided to do trivia, which was a wonderful time. It was probably an hour, hour and a half, something like that. And we're all recording our own score, but there's no score check along the way. So we're not really sure like how we're all doing. And I kid you not, as we're all like waiting for Sean, the officiant, to announce who won. I won, by the way. To announce who won, the whole Zoom closes. We're just all kicked out, and it was this classic like take your ball and leave situation. Meredith apparently had to go, I guess, and canceled the whole meeting, and we're all waiting for the winner.
You know what's funny is like I'm always trying to figure out how to like cancel a whole meeting when I'm on like normal Zoom calls, and I never do it. Like I always just
Well, you went the other way. You overcorrected. I mean,
I don't know.
anyways, great. All right. Well, so anyways, let's get into it. And Meredith, I think you've got a number of questions that we've heard from clients and just around the world. So why don't we go through those and we can give our quick thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So one question that we've been getting this week is, I'm in line. I really haven't heard from my bank. Do I get out of line and go somewhere else? Do I just wait and hope for the best?
Yeah, good question. And I think initially, I think initially it is really unclear what would happen if you were to apply at a second place. The SBA is pretty clear you can't apply twice, and so we were worried that it might somehow jeopardize your initial application. But what we're hearing now, and what we've seen sort of anecdotally from a few experiments, is that if you happen to apply a second time at a different lender, worst that happens is whatever application makes it to the SBA twice or the second time just gets denied sort of out of hand because it's a duplicate TIN. So I guess short answer is feel free. If you're at a big bank and you're in purgatory, go ahead and try Cabbage or Gusto or one of those others. Seemingly no harm, no foul.
Awesome. Another question. So we get all this money. Now what? Do we set up a new checking account and put our PPP funding in there? What do we do? Do we just put it in our regular checking account?
Yeah, I mean, this is incredibly rampant. Like, not only if any of our clients feel like I'm talking to them, I'm not. I mean, it's very very pervasive, and it's I'm seeing it online too. So my point of view is no. Don't do that. I mean, it's not to say that it's like the worst thing in the world if you decide to do it. I just think it's entirely unnecessary, right? I don't know what it accomplishes. It's not as if it makes the record keeping way easier. There's only like a few things that are can be used and are subject to forgiveness. Anyways, we're already doing that. That's what accounting is, right? When you have us, you don't need a bank account to do your organization for you. And I don't see how it makes the forgiveness process any easier anyways. It's not like you can just hand this clean bank statement over and say, see, you're going to have to substantiate it with payroll reports and utility bills and things like that. So again, I say I don't know what it gives you, and in return, it creates more complexity. You risk messing up a payroll run. Like, I don't know. It's not worth it for me, but I guess to each his own.
Yeah. And then another question, or a lot of the payroll software that we work with right now too is offering this of deferring your tax payments. So
payroll tax. Yeah, and so on this one, I'd say definitely. It's I mean, I guess with the caveat of it's a loan, right? So if you're going to do it, we're going to have to record it as a loan, and we got to make sure that we don't just spend the money, that we have the ability to pay it back at some point in the future. But otherwise, it's an interest-free loan. It's certainly worth taking advantage of. The one caveat being that if you do take the PPP, you will not be able to take the interest-free loan after the date you get forgiveness. So let's say you just got funds for the next 8 weeks, you can defer your payroll taxes and you get this loan. As soon as you get your forgiveness, then that interest-free loan stops. You owe it 2 years later and you can't take any more. You can't defer any more payroll taxes. But in the meantime, there's no reason not to, in my opinion.
What about people that are not getting the PPP? Are they still okay to take that?
Yeah, well, for those of you that are not getting the PPP, I'd say two things. One, definitely take advantage of the payroll tax deferral, and that will last you through the end of the year. And then there's also a credit, I think we talked about this last week, of up to $5,000 per employee. And while it's not as much as the PPP, it's certainly far better than zero. So those two things, I think, would be worth pursuing.
Yeah. Those are the main questions that we saw.
Okay, good. Love it. Snappy, getting easier, right?
Yeah, faster.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, cool. So Ryan sat down and did another interview. I hope you guys are enjoying these and finding them helpful. He sat down with Josh Barrett. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Josh Barrett.
Of Matchstick Legal to talk all things legal during COVID.
All right, so super excited for this week's interview. We have with us today Josh Barrett of Matchstick Legal, and I'm not going to steal Josh's thunder. I'll let Josh describe his practice, but like us and lots of folks we've talked to so far, they focus exclusively on agencies, and he's got a really interesting, unique perspective. I'm excited for him to share with us. So, anyways, Josh, welcome, and maybe give us the elevator pitch on the firm.
Yeah. Hi, Ryan. So I'm Josh Barrett. I'm an owner and founder of Matchstick Legal. My business partner, Gabe Levine, many of you probably know. And we work almost exclusively with agencies of different size, from freelancers up to full service agencies with over 100 employees. The bulk of the work that we do is around contracts and business work, leases, vendor agreements, independent contractors, employees, partnership agreements, those types of things. And, with everything going on, a lot of the analysis and the way that we approach those things, we went from a pretty solid economy in January, February in 2019 into a very different situation. And so we're really helping people navigate that new situation because the rules are just different.
All right, so I want to get into that because I think it's really interesting, and I'm suspecting you're about to say a number of things our clients have yet to consider. But before I go there, I do want to ask you one question because, again, I do think you offer a really interesting lens into the agency space like we do and some other folks we've talked to, which is you've got a variety of clients, and so you get to see what's happening among all of them. So I don't know. I mean, again, we're sitting here, what is it, the 29th of April. What is the agency world looking like right now? Is it mostly pessimistic, mostly optimistic, mostly just wait and see? None of us know. I don't know. What is the, like, how would you assess where agencies are sitting right now?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Attitudes, I think, have gotten a little bit rosier, and that's not to say rosy, but I think in the first few weeks of this, people were really despondent even. I think as PPP money is hitting, people are adjusting to the new normal. I think people are feeling a little bit better. That doesn't mean that their pipelines are overflowing, but I think it means that people have adjusted. So that's good. We all need to adjust.
Yeah.
People are signing up projects, maybe not at the rate they once were, but they're seeing, okay, it's not like the pipeline is completely decimated. And so that's certainly good. Seeing a little life even in these weird times is really good. But that's not true for anyone. There's certainly some people, some agencies that this has been really damaging for, depending on the clientele. We have some clients in the financial services space and the health space, and they're plenty busy. But if you make small websites for mom and pops or small businesses, that's the kind of budget that can be put on hold for a while. And so some people are suffering with that a little bit. But I think attitudes are certainly adjusting, and that's nice to see going forward.
Well, okay, so now I'm realizing that, again, given that a lot of your work lives within revenue contracts, again, you're sort of tip of the spear on trends in what new projects look like, right? So I guess one question I've got for you
Sure.
on the trend landscape would be for those. I mean, again, you mentioned, and we're seeing the same thing. It's not as if projects have evaporated. It's not like nobody's winning any new work. It's just a little bit tougher sledding. I guess my question for you would be, of the work you're seeing get won, is that agencies that are sticking to their core, what they do, and it's just some work is coming through, or are you seeing agencies sort of transform or redefine their offering, and because of small pivots, they're having some success?
Yeah, boy, that's a real mix. I would say the more development heavy firms are staying pretty consistent in product mix, but we also have a lot of video production shops that we're getting on set and doing a live video production, a commercial for Adidas or something. Those aren't happening where you have 50 people on set for 4 days. It's just not happening. So those firms, we're seeing some pivot to like motion graphic and sort of animation based video. And so, people are having to adjust. That's for sure.
Yep. All right. Well, then let me go into, some things that are maybe a little bit meatier and a little bit more actionable.
Sure.
Obviously, as I thought about revenue contracts 4 months ago, the world has changed. Everything is different, and I should be thinking
Yeah.
about cash collectability. I should be thinking about credit risk. I should be thinking about a lot of things entirely different than I once did. So, I guess what sorts of things would you recommend I rethink, and what sorts of strategies are you using on behalf of your clients as they start to sign new work?
Yeah. Really important question. Um, Dealing with contracts, a lot of things can stay the same from deal to deal, but payment terms and the risk profile certainly has changed. I know some major brands that just sent out blanket emails to their creative agencies saying, we're not paying for the foreseeable future. It doesn't matter if it was in progress, it was work to come. So things
Yep.
are very different. So a couple
Yep.
things that we're encouraging people to do. The old 50 down and 50 on delivery just doesn't work in this era. You need to get a lot more money up front,
Yep.
and structure it maybe more like rent payments. So you are not behind the payment ball, because this can go on. We could have another big shutdown surge. And so you need to be adjusting and getting more of your money up front. And believe it or not, agencies have the leverage to negotiate for that now, probably more than ever. So that's certainly something to keep in
Well,
mind. The
interesting.
other thing,
I didn't. I'm so sorry. I want to go to another thing, but while you have that, it's a really
yeah,
interesting thought, and I just want to hover on it for a second. You mentioned that agencies have more leverage to be able to do these things. Because I was going to ask you, what do I have to pay for that? You know what I mean? Like, what would I have to offer in
yeah.
order to get money up front? Do I have to do that, or again, as you say, do I have the leverage that I'm maybe not thinking about to just ask for it? What?
Yeah, it's certainly asking for it. I think agencies probably should be more aggressive on payment terms generally, even in a good economy.
Yep.
I think they have the leverage to ask for it now. And, whether it's leverage or just a global realization that things are different,
Yeah.
many agencies, were it not for PPP or something like that, would have had to mothball. So I think that, call it leverage or call it just a realization, we're seeing the agencies that we have that are asking for different payment terms are having a lot more success in getting it, and just being frank and upfront with the reality of the situation, that they need it to get that work done.
In order to fund the work. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. That's an amazing point, and I hope I didn't ruin your train of thought. There was another thing you were
Yeah.
going to tell us about with regard to how I want to think differently about contracts.
Sure. The other thing that we really emphasize is, while agencies are certainly hurting and struggling, and having to adjust, the clients, the brands are as well. And
Yep.
so a lot of these conversations start with the brand coming to the agency and saying, "Hey, we need to slow things down or stretch payments over a longer period of time, or chop off this piece of the work," or the client, the brand, is asking for an adjustment from the agency. And the thing we emphasize is that, the reality is you might have to make that adjustment, but that is an appropriate time to ask for something in exchange. And so maybe if you were on billing in arrears up until that point, when the client asks to slow down the second half of the project, you say, "Yeah, we realize, but we're going to have to ask you in exchange to switch to payments up front."
Yeah.
Um, and so realize that, when a client asks for something, they're asking for an amendment to the contract, and you don't have to give that for free.
Yep.
And you're going to have to bend a little bit. Agencies are going to have to bend a little bit for their clients. And so it's okay to ask the brand to bend a little bit for the agency as well.
So I guess maybe a final question for you, and then maybe some parting wisdom or any other advice you would
Yeah.
have. But you mentioned the idea of two parties in a contract, whether it's a service agreement or it's rent or it's a vendor, sort of saying like, "Look, we're both in a really rough situation, and so let's find some sort of middle ground to compromise so that we can both make it through this whole thing." And again, you're sitting almost as a referee on the sidelines here, so I'm interested to know, like, are you seeing those sorts of things, generally speaking, work themselves out relatively, symbiotically and amicably, or are you getting hit up often because we're struggling to come to compromise, and parties are coming to blows, and now it's getting even maybe a little litigious. How is that all? How is it working?
Yeah, I think most of these problems are being resolved through negotiation. I think some parties are, landlords in particular, are coming to the table probably more aggressively and trying to push on the agencies or tenants, I think a little harder than is realistic for the situation. But here's the thing, the reason that, it's not that litigation isn't always a possible issue, right? If you default on a big lease or something.
Sure.
But in most of the country, all the courts are shut down.
Yeah, right.
And they're not doing anything other than emergency, and some civil action for rent is not an emergency. It might be an emergency to a landlord, but it's not an emergency. And when the courts open back up, there's a huge backlog of things that are far more pressing, criminal matters involving children, that are going to get priority. Those civil matters are going to be pushed way back, and there's going to be a big line at the courthouse. And so the typical threats that landlords and other parties use don't have as much weight right now, because they can't get to court for that big hammer, that big remedy that they want to flex. And so I think that is what is driving more mutual negotiation and working out of these problems. And that's why agencies have a little bit more leverage to flex and say, hey, we need to cut the rent for 6 months or a year or whatever it is. The landlord doesn't really have a choice. This is the reality.
Yeah, there's no optionality. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I have to tell you, I feel like we could go on for days about all of this, but this has been super enlightening and really helpful. And I have to say that I want to thank you for coming on, and I was going to say, let the folks know where they can find you if they want to learn some more, and I will ask you to plug your blog, because as I was telling you before we started, if you've not checked out the Matchstick Legal blog, it's phenomenal. It's both useful and also really entertaining. So anyways, Josh, where can people find your website and your blog and get a hold of you?
If they track us down at matchstick.legal, that's the best place, and the blog's right up there, and I'm sure it'll prompt you to sign up for a newsletter, and we do some stuff in there, some bonus content. And we're on all the social places, so you can find us, but just hit the website, matchstick.legal, and there's a contact form if you need to reach out for Gabe or I or Jennifer. We'd be happy to visit with you and see how we can navigate these things together.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure.
You bet, Ryan. Take care.
That was great. Josh is a great guy. If you guys need legal work, check him out, reach out to him. Let us know in the meantime if you have questions or have other things that you would like to hear from us.
Thanks.